Okay, we're back with the visual sources along with the table, the two tables, and how to analyze. When you look at document 7, you have a picture of a cabin. Okay, you've got this picture of a cabin. And I want you to look at this because some students are looking at this and thinking, that is really small. Now, y'all remember, we're talking about the 18th century early here, and we're not talking about living today. And not everybody needed their privacy like they do now. The idea that every child would have their own room is just ridiculous and unnecessary and wasn't going to happen, at least to poor and middle class families. So I'm looking at this cabin and I see 2 fireplaces. Okay, so you know you're going to be warm because you've got 2 fireplaces. The fireplace in the back would be more than likely the kitchen. So you have a hearth where you can cook and the family can gather. You have windows in this cabin. That's pretty cool. You have glass windows. You have one at the bottom, and then you have a second story, which would probably be either, it looks like a sleeping kind of loft. Okay, so you've got that. You've got a really cool front porch. I envy that front porch. And you've got Penn's house. When I looked at the dimensions of that and did my basic math, I saw that the little house that he was building in document 6 was 540 square feet, which would be, for that time, not a bad size for a family. Okay, so that is document 7. You have to decide once you finish, and when you look back at document 6 and figure out how much it would cost you to build that house, you decide, is that an advantage or a disadvantage? Then you turn to document 8, which is Charles Norris's mansion on Chestnut Street, which, by the way, has been torn down and replaced several times by different businesses. But when I look at that, I see one very, very magnificent home. The size, the wealth, the neighborhood, is that an advantage to you? Does that say, some people were like really, really rich. And you can look at it as an advantage, like I could aspire to that, or you can look at it as a disadvantage, especially when you look at some of the tables that are later in the chapter. Okay, so that's document 8. Now, the map on Pennsylvania, I've included on the VIN notes. There's a map, but I can't seem to get a good reproduction of that map. So you're looking at the sizes of the land, the parcels of land, and William Penn, who was quite wealthy himself, but he wanted the people who came over to settle Pennsylvania to have farms of 450 acres each. So if we follow that idea of, it's really social, political, and economic equality, then all of the parcels that are in Philadelphia should be the same size. So when you're looking at the map, are they the same size? Did they stick to that wish of William Penn? And I think you can probably see that maybe that's not the case. So maybe possibly land was not distributed fairly. Plus, again, you have 2 tables that you'll be working with that can inform whether you're going to put that map on the advantages side or the disadvantages side. Now, then you have 2 charts. One of the charts is wealth distribution in Philadelphia from 1693 to 1774. So when we look at this, and you should have a copy in front of you, I'm looking at the segments of wealth holding population. And then the next part is the percentage of total wealth. And so we're going from 1693 to 1774. So we have 3 columns there that show you what's happening with this wealth. So the very poorest of poor people, the bottom, okay, let's say we've got 100 people here. Okay, we'll look at it like that. We have 100 people. It's a whole lot more than that, but if you do it in percentages, but we'll just say 100 people. So the bottom 30 people from 1693, they had 2.2% of the wealth. By 1767, 1.8. By 1774, 1.1. So you draw the conclusion. What's happening to their wealth? Are they gaining or are they getting poorer? The next group from, say, our 100 people is 31 through 60. They start off in 1693 with 15% of the wealth. And then it goes down to 5.5. And by 1774, they're sitting on 4% of the wealth. What's happened to their wealth as this next, not the poorest of the poor group, but the next poorest group? And then we go to, say, people 61 through 90. And we start with, they own 36.6% of the wealth. By 1767, they're down 27, and then by 1774, they're down to 22.6%. So add up from 0 to 90 and add up how much of the wealth. You just add 2.2, 15.2, and 36.6. I get about 54% of the wealth was owned by the top 90% or people. Okay? And then you can add each column as you go through, and you can find out the bottom 90%. What are you seeing from 1693 to 1774, which is the eve of the American Revolution? What's happened to most of the people that are in the colonies? Not colonies, but at least Philadelphia here. And then the second part, the 91 through 100, the richest people, what do they own? In 1693, they owned 46%. By 1774, they owned 72.3% of the wealth. And so you can go, and then the top 91 through 95 and 96 through 100. So you're going to take each of those columns and you're going to be looking at what's happening. Are we going up or are we going down? Depending on where you are, whether you're the poorest or the richest. Over that time period of almost 100 years. Not quite, but what's happening to your wealth. Y'all, that's going to make a difference in your decision. Now, you're probably thinking, where did this information come from? Primary sources. So this is actually a secondary source that's based on primary sources. Historians have done the analysis and given you this nifty little chart. So you have to decide, as an indentured servant who's looking for a place that doesn't have extreme wealth and extreme poverty, is there a middle class here? Will you be part of this middle class? Can you work your way up? Will there be economic mobility for you? Okay, so that's document 10. You have to decide, is that an advantage or a disadvantage? In your own words, you have to analyze this chart, put it into your own words, and decide which side of the chart it's going to go on. Document 11 is the acquisition of land by former indentured servants from 1686 to 1720. This is in Pennsylvania. So you're going to be looking at the number of acres and the number of former servants and then the percentage of land that they're getting. So if we look at the total sample, and this sample was 196 former indentured servants. right? 196 is what they looked at. And then look at, just go over on the chart and look at the number of former servants, 68, who actually got land. So how much land did they get? These go-getters who got land, 27 of the servants, which is 39% of the former servants, got 1 to 50 acres. And 51 to 100 acres, you can follow, 14 of them got 51 to 100 acres, 101 to 150, 5 of them, and just follow it down and realize that 68 out of the 196 people actually got land. And how much land did they get? Do you remember back to what William Penn wanted each farm to have? 450 acres. So, how are you doing as a former indentured servant? Are you getting the land that you think that you're going to get? What are your chances here? 196 people from this period, 68 got land. You figure it out. Put it in a pro or a con. So remember, every document is used. You're going to put them either in the advantages or the disadvantages. You're going to write complete sentences and you're going to paraphrase. And you're going to put the document number, DOC period 1, 2, all the way to 11, and you're going to put it in parentheses, and that will get it done. Okay, now we're back to the instructions, because once you've done this, you're ready for your decision monologue.